Oh my God, today we're going to be talking about three different stories. One, the Straits of Hormuz are closed. Why? Let's find out why. Two, Mark Carney said that excess fuel tax in Canada will be suspended until Labor Day. Why? Let's find out. And number three, Lebanon, Israel, Lebanon. Chaos, death, and a whole lot of things. So first thing first, let's get started with why is the Straits of Hormuz closed? The Straits of Hormuz are closed, and this time who closed it? The US, not Iran. Ain't it wild that the US went to war with Iran because Iran decided to close the Straits of Hormuz? And now that the US is closing the Straits of Hormuz, it's in order to win the war that they started because the Straits of Hormuz were closed. But now that Iran said that they would open it, the US decided to close it. If you're confused, so am I. It makes no sense because it's like a weird backwards game where you're the bad guy because I said you're the bad guy. And then you say, no, I want to be the good guy now. And then I'm like, well, if you're going to be the good guy, let me be the bad guy now. And so you're fighting the good guy now? Like, you see how confusing that is? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But anyways, the US decided to close the Straits of Hormuz because the negotiation and the ceasefire weren't really going the way that they expected it to go. So what's next? If you can't throw bombs at them because you have a ceasefire and you can't get to a deal because the ceasefire negotiation aren't going too well, do what the US always does, which is increase the pressure until something breaks. Whether it's the US's will to fight or Iran's will to fight or the world's will to accept the new norm. Whichever comes first, one has to come first, but something will come first. So as of right now, it's closed. No boats are going through. Iran said that we will allow any boats that we inspect to go through. And the US said, yeah, that doesn't work for us because we don't want you inspecting any boats. We don't want you releasing any boats. We don't want any boats going through. So now this is a big chaos because the Asian world heavily depends on oil from the Middle East. And because the US is self-sustained, they have enough fuel that is generated from their own country that they don't need anything from the Middle East. They feel like they can get away with it because it doesn't really affect them as much. The only time that it affects them is because of the same thing in Canada, where you have the oil producing countries. They come together, they set the target for how much oil should cost. It doesn't depend on how far it travels. It doesn't depend on where it's coming from. They just say, this is the cost because we said this is the cost. So in the US, they're still making it for the same price. The transportation is just a little bit more expensive, but not to the equivalent where you have to trek it from the Middle East to China, to Korea, to Japan. But at the same time, it's not to the same extent. So the US is making billions and billions and billions from their crude at home. And those billions and billions and billions are going into their pockets because the cost is still the same to produce it. But to the end user, the price went up because of the instability. And now the US has two major oil areas, Venezuela and the US. They both produce it, and they're both realistically controlled by the US. How much oil is pumped out, where that oil goes, the US controls it. So they feel like they're out of touch, they're away from it, and it's not gonna impact them as much. But the rest of the world is going crazy because China, like I said, Korea, Japan, Indonesia, like most of these Asian countries depend heavily on oil from the Middle East. And the oil from the Middle East, there were about 20 million barrels a day leaving Iran to go to Asia. Now those 20 million ain't going no more. So now it's just more chaos. It's just more headache. I'm pretty sure there's a plan by the US. I just don't see it. But that's just me. So now on to our next topic. Carney, I think as of yesterday or the day before, announced that excess fuel tax will be suspended until Labor Day. Canada produces oil. We should not be paying, what is it, like almost $4, $2? Almost $2 at the pump. $2 a liter is expensive. It makes you want to leave your car at home and just say, you know what, I'm just going to walk. I'm going to take a bus. Like, it's insane. You produce it here. It should be cheaper here. Like most of the Middle Eastern countries where they produce oil, they don't pay as much as the rest of the world. And since the war did begin, of course, it went up. But at the same time, it didn't go up to ridiculous amounts where people have to choose between eating food or driving a car. You shouldn't have to choose that. Eating food or going to school or going to work with the convenience of your car. That shouldn't be a choice. That should be a given where you would be able to drive your vehicle to get to work, to get to school, to get to your son's or daughter's baseball game or basketball game or soccer game. Now you have to budget it out. You have to tell your kids, hey, this year you can't join the basketball team. You can't join the hockey team because we can't afford to drive you around. And if we do drive you around, we can't afford to eat. Like, it doesn't make sense. So Carney, you're supposed to be the money man. You're supposed to be the economy guy. Do something. Like, it's not normal where somebody has to choose between eating food and their life. Whether that's school, work, kids. Like, I shouldn't have to choose. I should be able to enjoy them both. We live in a first world country. That was the beauty of this country. That was the alluring aspect where the growth, the potential, the opportunities, now all of that's being lost. And what are we gaining for that? I don't know. Why are we even still supporting this war? We should be telling the US and telling Israel. We should be at the UN screaming our lungs out, saying this is wrong, and we should be sanctioning people. Isn't that what Canada is supposed to do? When a country does something wrong, they should be sanctioned. And those sanctions should come from the world. Not a singular country, the world. We're in NATO. NATO should be sanctioning Israel and US. Not passively saying the war should stop. The Strait of Hormuz should be opened. Everybody knows it should stop. Everybody knows it should be open. But you have to say what the wrong is, who the wrong person is. So when Carney says, yeah, I'm going to suspend excess fuel tax. Really? What's that supposed to do? How much money does that save at the pumps? Cents? What about the food? Does the price of the food also go down? So if I do my grocery shopping, a jug of milk, is the price going to go down? A dozen eggs, will the price go down? No, in order for this to go down, Iran, US, and Israel have to stop. And the two driving forces are US and Israel. They have to stop. Like, wrong is wrong, right is right. Common sense says, stop. because that's what common sense is. You can tell who's wrong, and you should be able to say, hey, you're wrong. If you don't know how you're wrong, let me help you. I'll tell you how you're wrong. I'll give you advice. That's how it should be done. But this is the Canadian government where we basically bow down to the US. And we say, yeah, whatever Donald Trump does is right. We might say it like, he doesn't fully understand it. We'll come up with excuses. But there is no excuse. Wrong is wrong. This should be stopped. Next topic. Lebanon's still getting bombed. So many people, so many deaths, so much destruction. It's insane that this is allowed to happen. This is allowed to be going on in a sovereign country that is not at war. Lebanon is becoming the next Gaza. Why? Because Israel can literally do what it wants, when it wants, how it wants. Like, everybody is up in arms. Iran is saying Lebanon is included in the ceasefire. You and Israel are saying no. Pakistan is saying it's included. Once again, US and Israel are saying no, it's not. And because US and Israel have the biggest guns, they can dictate the terms. So Lebanon, from the capital of Beirut to the south, it's getting bombed. And when I say bombed, I mean bombed. Like, everything in sight is being blown up, from bridges to buildings to schools to universities to you name it. And the only reason this is all happening is because Israel can do whatever it wants. It has immunity. Because if anybody says anything about Israel, the first thing that will come out of any Israeli government or any Israeli defender, the first thing to come out of their mouth is anti-Semitic. How is it anti-Semitic to say death is wrong? Murder is wrong. So yes, the government of Israel can't be criticized, and they should be criticized, because what they're doing is horrendous. What they're doing wrong is wrong in so many ways. So during the negotiation between Israel and Lebanon and US, hosted by the US as mediators, they talked about everything. How to disarm Hezbollah, what the Lebanese army's role would be, and how they should do it, and what the Israelis would take, or where the red lines for everybody is. Once the negotiation was done, there was no ceasefire, there was no deal, but both sides said, yeah, we're still going to talk about it, and we'll get back to it again. But the one thing that was interesting is when the Israeli ambassador did a news conference, he said that Israel gave a proposal to Lebanon. That proposal partitioned Lebanon into 3 areas: Area A, Area B, Area C. Does that sound familiar? The Oslo Accord. Area A, Area B, Area C. That was how Palestine was supposed to get sovereignty and become its own nation, which turned out to be its downfall and its constant Israeli settlement growth. So anyways, Israel said that we're going to partition Lebanon into 3 areas: Area A, B, C. Area A would be 8 kilometers from the border of Israel into Lebanon, which would become a buffer zone. That is a no-go zone for Lebanon. What's it called? Israel would fully control it. They would have army bases, they would have soldiers, they would have everything that they need, which is a buffer zone, meaning that you can't come south of that if you're Lebanese. Now, the second part, Area B, is from that 8 kilometers, up to the Litani River. Up to the Litani River is called, they want to call it Area B. Area B is where Israel could have operational access meaning they can bomb, they can kill, they can murder, they can shoot whenever, however they feel. Everybody that lives in that area will be under constant oppression. It would be basically the same as living in the West Bank. They could set up checkpoints if they want. They could not set up checkpoints if they want. They could fly a drone and blow up a mosque or a church or a school. They can do whatever they want whenever they want. And then Area C would be everything north of the Litani River, which the Lebanese government would have full operational control. But what does that mean? That means it's another way to annex another swath of land from another country. So we have a couple of areas already taken from different countries. Now it's Lebanon's turn to get another portion of their land taken away. The Greater Israel concept is being fulfilled slowly, but it's being fulfilled. And this is just the next iteration. This is just the next phase. But once again, wrong is wrong. Anybody, any death, any murder, any common sense, wrong is wrong. Let's not play games. Let's not play semantics. Call it for what it is. Wrong is wrong.